What's up, everybody, and welcome back to our channel. My name is Sydney and this is Ricky, and you're on the Connor and Sydney channel. As you can see, we have had a baby. We have been very busy, but we're back and I'm excited to share with you guys my birth story. But before we get into that, I just wanted to share Ricky Jolene with you guys. Yeah, look up there. But she is ready for a nap. So we will get that going and then I will be right back to start the video. All right, Dad took Ricky, so I can talk about my birth story now. So I didn't really know anybody personally who had done an out-of-hospital birth, but about 4 months into my pregnancy, I had been reading a lot and researching a lot, and I decided that I was going to have an out-of-hospital birth. I felt like I knew too much after doing all this research. I knew I was personally going to be the most comfortable not in a hospital. I would have loved to do a home birth, but it was going to be more complicated and it cost more. They had like extra fees. So we went ahead and decided that we were going to have the baby at a birth center. And as soon as I started having these appointments at the birth center, I felt way more comfortable, way more at home. And these appointments Connor and I went to together, and they were just really awesome, and we were so excited for birth. I didn't like come out and tell people like very publicly on social media or anything that I was having an out-of-hospital birth, because there is so much backlash that comes with that, and so many people would have tried to talk me out of it and tell me about all these horror stories of things that could happen, and I didn't want to hear it because I knew that that's what I was gonna do, and I didn't want to hear people say, well, what happens when you can't get your epidural? What happens when you have to get an emergency C-section? I was just like, nope, I'm doing this and I don't want to hear anybody talk me out of it. So that's what I did. And I also took Karen Welton's birth course. It's called Pain-Free Birth. And that also is something where people would say there's no such thing. But I had seen it done in so many videos. So I was believing for no pain. Those were kind of my expectations going into it. So I'm going to kind of go through it from beginning to end. So my due date was June 15th. They had warned me ahead of time, it's your first baby and everything is perfectly healthy. So on average, you will probably go 8 days over. So I was planning to go 8 days over, which was Thursday, June 23rd. I went in for my appointment and I had told them my mom went 11 days over with one of her babies and my grandma went 10 days over with like all of her babies. So I was feeling good. I was like, this baby will come when it's ready. It's only 8 days right now. So they asked me if I wanted to do a membrane sweep, or I guess we're just like, okay, let's go ahead and do your membrane sweep. But I declined. And for those of you who don't know, you can basically decline anything that any doctor or hospital offers to you if you don't feel comfortable with it. So I was still waiting to do everything totally natural with no intervention at all whatsoever. And they did a non-stress test on me to make sure everything was good with the baby. And it showed that there were like teeny tiny contractions going on, probably like Braxton Hicks. So I was like, nope, everything's good. Everything's happening as it should be. I decline, I'm going home. So this was on Thursday, June 23rd. So I thought maybe labor would start that night or the day after. But I spent the next several days doing absolutely everything in my power to get the baby out, and not because I was like, I don't want to be pregnant anymore, which I didn't, but I happily would have went 43 weeks pregnant if I could have. But the midwives told me that at 42 weeks they were gonna have to send me to the hospital for induction or whatever, like we were gonna have to find another method because they could only have me at the birth center until 42 weeks. So that was on Thursday. So from Thursday to the next Wednesday, I had to have this baby. So then I kind of got into a panic. I was like, we got to get this baby out. And I kid you not, when I woke up in the morning, I was working on getting the baby out until I went to bed at night, every night. Connor and I were doing everything to get oxytocin flowing. We're like listening to music and slow dancing. And he made the whole apartment like a spa, basically. Like we had like twinkle lights and spa music playing, and I just had pillows all around me in the living room, and we were going for lots of walks and just so many things. I was walking stairs and eating pineapples and dates and spicy stuff and just everything. So Thursday was that appointment. The next day on Friday, we just had a chill night. We were listening to music and eating pizza and just having a great night. I thought that honestly, I was going to go into labor that night because I had so much oxytocin flowing, but it still didn't happen. Okay, also, here's the thing. My midwife that I had worked with my entire pregnancy worked Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and part of Fridays. So I really wanted her, but I was like, this isn't gonna happen because I'm gonna have the baby over the weekend. So there was one other girl that worked all weekend, and I didn't really know her, but I was like, okay, like whatever, it's not the end of the world. But there was one midwife that I did not want. We had a like not the best experience with her, and she was working on a Monday. So we were like, okay, as long as we don't have the baby on Monday. But we were still bummed that we weren't gonna get to have my midwife. Anyways, on Saturday, we were like, okay, we're gonna have like our second place girl delivering our baby if we have her today, but we need to have the baby. So I took castor oil, and that was just, it was like just a mess for several hours. It was painful. You're like cramping up and going to the bathroom repeatedly. And then once all that kind of slowed down, we went to B-dubs that night, and now contractions had started, but they were like 8 and 9 minutes apart. I was like, okay, probably gonna have the baby during the night tonight. So this was Saturday night, already 2 days later. I just kept feeling like, oh, so many girls, like they'll have a fast labor or something, but like I was working so hard for my contractions. Anytime they would like slow down, I was like, nope, we're going for a walk, we're walking on these stairs. Like I was working so hard for my contractions, and now looking back on it, I'm like, I shouldn't have had to work so hard for them. But I was in such a rushed panic because I was like, I gotta get this baby out before Wednesday because I do not want to be induced at the hospital. One, I don't want to be induced. And two, I've done all this work for all these months at the birth center and we've paid for it. And I would end up having to have a hospital birth and pay for a hospital birth. So I was like, no, like that's not happening. So Saturday night, like sleeping at that point became too uncomfortable. This is when Connor set up our living room like a spa and tried to make it as comfortable for me as possible. I had contractions through the night, very uncomfortable, and the next morning, still no baby. So now it was Sunday. We were doing all sorts of different like exercises all day long to get the baby in the right position because we're like, maybe she's malpositioned. I was having contractions this whole time. So like I started feeling them lightly on Thursday and then more during the day on Friday, and then I had them for days. So it felt like I was in labor for days. And another thing, now it was Sunday, it was the 26th. I already have family with birthdays on the 26th and the 27th. And we were like, man, we really thought that our baby was gonna have her own birthday. And it's no big deal to have the same birthday as somebody else. It is funny how God's timing works because it got to Sunday and I was like then praying, God, let me have this baby today. Please, I don't want to be induced. Let me have her today. And then it's funny, like, you'll see later how the timing worked out. But anyways, I had an appointment on Monday morning. I told them, I was like, I'm not gonna need that appointment on Monday because we're gonna have a baby before then. We were really trying to avoid going to it because at this point we were gonna have to do a membrane sweep because I didn't want to be induced on Wednesday. So they were like, we got to get the ball rolling. So here it was Sunday. I'm like panicking, trying to get this baby out all day long. And I was having contractions all day. So Sunday night, I called the midwife and just asked if there was anything else that I could do to get labor going. She told me some tips and tricks. I did them all. Still no baby. So now it's Monday morning. The midwife that we were hoping to not give birth with was working on Monday, and now here I am praying, God, let me have this baby today on Monday. We were gonna have the midwife we didn't like, and here I was praying, God, give me the baby today, please, Lord. Like, I need to have this baby so I don't have to get induced at the hospital. So it's just funny how our perspective kept changing. Monday was June 27th. It had been several days since Thursday's appointment, and I knew I had to have a membrane sweep. I went in, still in the middle of all these contractions, staying up like all night, like several nights in a row because of painful contractions. So it'd been like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and my back was like already done, like so done. I was having so much back labor. Connor was giving me like counter pressure on my back where they like push down on your back during contractions. And if he didn't do this, I felt like I was like, my back was just breaking. So at this point I was like, okay, the sweep will just get things going. So I talked myself into it. I was like, this is okay. I declined every cervical check up until this point. Like, we declined basically everything in our birth experience. We were like trying to just go super physiological, natural, no interventions. At this point, I was like, we've got to have this baby or I'm going to end up at the hospital. So she swept me and said that she was really pleased. I started out at 1 or 2 centimeters, and after the sweep, I was at 3 or 4. So she was like, you're probably gonna go into labor in the next 24 hours. So I was like, awesome, this is great. But that sweep just made things so much more intense. Like my back was just hurting so much more. I rode in the back of our SUV everywhere we were going because I needed to be able to like lean forward because the front seat is kind of reclined like this, and it hurt so. It was not comfortable. And you'll like notice me probably catching several times in this video me saying like it hurt so bad or whatever, because like those are the words we typically use. But at the time I was so like well trained by all this like pain-free birth stuff. I just called it intensity and pressure, and it truly helped so much. I cannot even explain. But after the sweep, the midwife sent us over to the hospital to do another check to make sure everything was good with the baby. They did like ultrasound and non-stress tests and stuff like that on the baby. And by that point, I'm 12 days over my due date. So the hospital was like in awe, like, oh my goodness, like you're 12 days over, what in the world? So like, I knew they were probably gonna want to induce me regardless. They did all their tests. They said almost everything looks great. They're just a little bit concerned about this and this. So they said they would advise to stay there and get the induction, but they didn't feel like, those doctors did not feel very like urgent about it. So then I was like, does it really matter? Like it's Monday right now. I have up until Wednesday. I did not know what to do. Connor and I were both like, what the heck? Do we have to stay here and get induced right now? But like, they did not seem that urgent about it. So we were confused. We called, my midwife and asked if we could still have the baby at the birth center, and we let the doctors at the hospital talk to the midwife, and they ended up saying like everybody all together they weren't telling us what to do or what we could do, but we were basically asking for permission. Like, it's Monday right now, can we at least wait until Wednesday when I am 2 weeks over and then get induced if nothing has happened? But we were just so confident. We're like, we just had this membrane sweep, and if we get induced right now, that membrane sweep was for nothing because we didn't have like our 24 hours to give it a chance to do its job. So once we said that we declined the induction, they sent us home, and the nurse that was working with us was actually like so awesome. She was like, okay, cool. Like, here's some things to do to get it moving. And then we were like, okay, wait, like, was it not really that pressing that we get an induction? Because they seemed totally fine once we declined it. So we went back home and we're like, gosh, this baby has got to come now. We have 2 days. Monday night, late at night, probably like 10 o'clock, contractions. Like at one point they went like 3 minutes apart. And so we're like, oh my gosh, we're having this baby. We actually stopped in our kitchen. Connor was making cookies, and we stopped and prayed and thanked God that this baby is on its way. But they weren't like regularly staying at 3 minutes. It was like I had to keep working for them to be at 3 minutes. So we called the midwife and we're like, what do we do? Like, we've had it be like 3 minutes apart a couple times. And I know that they like probably think people are so dramatic all the time, because she just basically told us, okay, well, get some rest and let me know when you're coming in. And in my mind, I'm like, I've never had a baby before. How am I supposed to know when to come in? But I was just kind of like, okay, I guess I'll just know. So that was on Monday night, and it was still with the midwife that we didn't really want to be with. But everything, like God's timing just works so great. I kept dealing with the really intense contractions, but like working my way through them all night long. Once again, barely slept at all. And so Tuesday morning at like 8:30, we called the midwife again and just said like, what do we do? Like, things are kind of like progressing, but not like enough. And so she said, actually, you're gonna have to call Jennifer because she's on duty now. And Jennifer is the midwife that we had wanted all along. So we made it through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and now it was Tuesday. We were just like amazed, like, oh my gosh, if we would have this baby, we're gonna be with the midwife we want. We called the midwife, her name was Jennifer, and Jennifer said, okay, I am a few hours away. I could be there at noon or 12:30 to just check and see if you've progressed at all. I was just asking, like, can you sweep me again? Is there anything we can do? This is my last day. So she was like, yeah, we'll see what we can do. Meet me there at 12:30. And I kept asking Connor, does she mean that if things are good that I'll stay, or is she just kind of checking in on things? And Connor's like, I'm pretty sure she's just checking in on things. Like, don't take your bags. It doesn't sound like that kind of thing. So we get there at like 12:40, and she was like, how are you doing? And I just remember saying, okay, because I'm like, well, this is not my favorite thing. And I've been in labor, feeling like I've been in labor for like basically Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and now Tuesday. So my back was like shot. This is why I tell people, I'm like, it wasn't the like labor that was so bad, but it was the length of it, and having back labor for that long, your back eventually just gets exhausted and your body is exhausted, because I was barely sleeping for this many days. So it really wasn't the labor or like the contractions, but it was like the exhaustion of my back and my body for this long. Anyways, I was trying to talk to the midwife and get through like my contractions while we were discussing how everything had been going. And then I realized like, I can't really talk through these contractions, and like I can't really sit here and have a normal meeting. Like I have to stand up and like work my way through these. So like I had this meeting with my midwife while I'm like leaning over tables and having counter pressure and all that kind of stuff. Anyways, I was scared to get another sweep because I was like, oh, the last one like felt pretty intense. Like this one's probably going to be a lot worse. But it wasn't. And she just, as soon as she pulled her hand out, she said, I'm going to have you stay. You are way further along than I thought. You're about at 7 centimeters. And did you bring your bags? And at that moment, Connor and I looked at each other and we were like giddy, like, oh my gosh, like we finally get to have this baby. And it also felt great to know that all this work I'd been doing for days, like my body was making progress. Like it was working hard this whole time. So that felt really, really good to hear. So I debated for a second. I was like, should I go home and help you get all the bags? Which is funny because like on our way to the birth center, I remember sitting in the back being like, oh, I can't believe I have to make this drive again later today. Like the car was like the most uncomfortable position. So I noticed Connor actually had his blinkers on. So when we were standing there like thinking, should I go home with you and get the bags and we'll come back together again? We eventually decided, I was like, you know what? I'm going to hang out here. I'm going to trust you. I know you can do it. I know you can get all the right stuff. So I just sent him a list and let him go home and get everything. And I was basically like, don't miss it. And he was like, okay, I'm gonna really hurry. So I can't imagine in his position what he must have been going through, like driving home knowing that your wife is in labor somewhere else and it's now your responsibility to bring her everything that she needs for this labor. So this is like the stuff that I sent him. I said, make sure Bruno poops and pees and give him a scoop of food just in case. Make sure he has water. This is all for our dog. So he's like taking our dog out and everything. I'm telling him, get these bags, get several chargers, fill the cooler with ice, and these are all the snacks that I want, and these are all the like condiments that I want with it. Like I sent him a very, very detailed list. So that part would have been easy for him, but still the stress of it all and like getting that many things and not forgetting any of it and like checking back through, I don't know. That had to be a lot for him. We lived like 20 minutes away from the birth center. So at 2 o'clock, I called him just to like check in and see how everything was going, and you could tell he was feeling so frantic at home. I felt so bad, but he did amazing. He brought every single thing that I asked for and more. I was able to text my mom during this time, and even at this point, it's funny because every contraction that I was tracking on my phone, there's like a scale of 5 like on intensity, and I put every single one at like moderate. Even toward the end, I was still hitting moderate on all of them because I wanted to leave room for the worst of the worst. I didn't want to like call these insanely intense contractions painful like at a 5 because I didn't want that to feel like it was my maximum. So I called everything like a 3. Like everything was just like a moderate one. So anyways, I hung out at the birth center for a little while until Connor got back. Now I'm like walking around in a robe and socks, and it's just like basically feels like my house at this point. Here's another God thing that's like wild. I started talking to my midwife about how it's insane because I asked her, I'm like when's the next appointment? Like, do I need to be out of this room or whatever? And she said, oh, actually Tuesdays we don't have appointments here. I just came in for you to help you out. And I was like amazed at this point because not only did I get the midwife who I wanted, but she's gonna get her own birthday and you don't have any appointments. So I've got the whole place to myself. Like so many things lined up. I was just kind of amazed. I was like, this is perfect. This is exactly how it needed to be. Like I was begging to have this baby all weekend long with all these other midwives that I didn't want, but God was waiting until Tuesday when my induction would have had to be on Wednesdays. So then the midwife started giving me like homeopathic things. There were like little beads that I put under my tongue and little drops that I put in my mouth. And I don't know exactly what these do. I think they like specifically work directly on your cervix to like get everything ripened and ready. And things started progressing so quickly after that, so they must have really been working. I stood around and just like talked and hung out with the midwife and kept my mind distracted. Connor got back to the birth center around 2:30. Because the contractions were getting so much stronger and closer together, like everything was kind of blurring together. It really felt like he was only gone for like, I don't know, 20 minutes, but he was gone for over an hour. So as soon as he returned, he helped us set up the whole room. We bought candles and we set those all up. We turned the lights off. We put the spa music on and we just got the whole place like super cozy. He put the cooler in the right spot. Like everything was all set up now. Around 3 o'clock, Jennifer kept saying like, maybe you want to go take a shower. And I just like didn't really feel like it. And I didn't know like why she was really encouraging me to go take a shower. As soon as I was in the shower, I like realized that my contractions were getting way more intense and way closer together. And it felt like I was in the shower forever because like I kept trying to get out. Like, okay, I need to put my clothes on. I need to get back in the room. But everything took so long because I was having so many contractions so close together. So I was like, oh, this whole shower thing is not that fun, not that relaxing. So I got back into the room. And during one of the first contractions that I had, as soon as I got back into the room, I felt a little pop and like something fall onto the floor, but it wasn't a huge gush of water. There was like a little blood and stuff. And I was like, did my water break? Like that's what I imagine it feeling like a little pop inside of you, and then felt like something kind of fell. I don't know. So one of the funny parts is as soon as that happened, Connor and I are like scrambling around to try and clean up that spot on the floor. And we're like, what should we disinfect this with? Blah, blah, blah. And you could tell that the midwife was just kind of like, don't worry about it. This whole room is going to be sanitized after you guys leave. And it's so funny when you think of like the end of the birth, like what everything was covered in. It's like those little drops. I can't, like, it's funny now to think that we were like trying to make sure everything was all cleaned up. We don't want to get a mess like in this room. So at this point, I had been saying I wasn't going to get any cervical checks at all, but because I was already at 7 or 8, Jennifer was like, do you mind if we check you real quick and see where you're at so that I can see if I need the birth assistants to come sometime soon, because you're probably getting pretty close, but I don't want them to like come and then be waiting around all day. So at this point, I was just kind of like, I don't care. Like, go ahead and check me real quick. So she checked me. She said I was good, like about at a 9. So they called in the birth assistants and everything to make their way over. So much was happening. I didn't really realize how time was passing. Somehow it was already 5 o'clock. And I was like, what in the world has been happening for the past like 2 hours since Connor got back here? And I still don't remember. It's like all such a blur. But it's funny now because if I look back at my contraction tracking app, Connor had tracked the last 2 before I got into the bathtub, and he had them at maximum intensity, which is so funny because I would have still been marking them at moderate, but I know he tracked them because he put them at the most severe. So I must have really been like reacting to them. He was like, oh, these are intense, and put them all the way up. So at this point at like 5 o'clock, they told me you can go ahead and get in the tub. And I was like, I don't want to ruin it. Like, what if I need it more later? I don't want to ruin the tub thing by getting in too early and then like my labor stalling or something. Like, should I wait a little bit? And Jennifer was just like, I think it's a good time. So I got in the tub. Like, I felt like at that point I was incapable of doing anything. I had the midwife like tying my hair up in a scrunchie. I had Connor like tying my swimsuit top on because I was like, I still was like trying to have some dignity. I was like, I want my swimsuit top on. And they were like, you don't have to put that on. But I was like, I want this on. It's funny because I was still so private about everything going into it. And by the end, everything was done. You don't care about privacy by the end of it. So at this point, in the bathtub, I thought I was going to feel immediate relief because people tell you that that's like the best epidural you can get is to get in the warm bathtub. And I really didn't feel that. So I was a little disappointed at that point. I was like expecting it to be great, but it wasn't what I had in mind. I mostly was like floating on my back in the water because it took the least work for me to just like float there. I did try like every single position in that tub. I did hands and knees for a while. Okay, Ricky's back. So I felt like I was making more progress when I was on my hands and knees in the water, but I wasn't really on that side for very long. It seemed like I was I was floating on my back, like in the water, like literally just floating. And at that point, it like, your body almost, for me, it felt like it was losing strength. Like, I still knew I could do it. There was no point where I was like, it hurts too bad, I can't do it, or I need an epidural. But I was just like completely silent in between contractions, where I looked like I was, Connor thought, like, he'll even say now, he's like, oh yeah, Sid was like sleeping between contractions. And I don't think I ever was, but your body is like almost passed out in between, because it's enduring so much during each contraction that I probably looked like I was like dead in between. Like, my eyes were closed, I wouldn't speak, I wouldn't move. So like floating on my back just felt like it took the least effort, but it sure wasn't comfortable by any means. So at one point, the midwife had Connor like pouring pitchers of water over my belly, and that felt good for like a couple times, and then it was like getting way too intense, where it was like, okay, that's not working now, try something else. So it was just like an experiment the entire time, trying to figure out what's the most comfortable. So then there was one point that I think is like so memorable, like I will never forget this feeling, I don't think. But I had told her, like, I feel like I'm pushing and I don't mean to be pushing, but it feels like my body's doing it on its own. So that happened once, and then like the next push or the next contraction, I guess, felt like my body, like, I don't even know how to explain it. It was like, felt like every liquid in my body, which I don't know if anything came out, but it felt like every liquid in my body like exploded out of me. Like, it felt like there was a rush of water out of me, which I don't know if that was my water breaking, but I felt a huge rush of water, and it felt like my entire body was like being zapped at once. Like, I think all my arms and legs went straight and were like zzz. Like, it really felt like an electrocution, and like a flood of water just like shot out of me into the water. But like, you don't see the flood of water because you're in a bathtub. So like, I don't know if anything actually came out. I didn't like look down and see or whatever, but that's what it felt like. And that was like the start of when I felt like I couldn't not push. But instead of pushing, I wasn't like pushing like that. I started like breathing through them, because I had learned like J breathing and different breathing techniques to help you breathe the baby out. So at that point, I like started doing all those breathing techniques to try and keep pushing the baby down. So at this point, she told me, like, stick your hand down there and see if you can feel the baby's head. And so I did, and I was so like out of it, and also like I felt so weak and like almost like sick, and just so much going on. I think I was like scared to feel the head and didn't know like how I'd react if I felt the head. So I was just like, I tried to, and then I was just kind of like, I don't feel it. And then a second later, she like, I don't know if she saw it or she felt it or what happened, but then she told me to try again, and she was like, Sydney, put your hand down there and feel that head. It is right there. And so I tried one more time, and then I did feel the head. And I think she was like hoping it would, of course, like excite me and encourage me. But I think I felt like so unstable at the time. I just like didn't really have much of a feeling at all. I think all I was really thinking though was like, I sure hope this means it's close. Like, I hope it's almost over. So from this point, things got like pretty rough. I would say like pretty difficult. I was floating on my back in the water, like floating, like not like laying down on the water. And I feel so bad for Connor, because he was like trying to give me counter pressure on my back, but because I was floating, he had to do it like upwards. He was like helping me to float by like keeping his hand under me, especially like during the contractions. And so he literally held me through every single contraction. He was holding me up and pushing against my back from underneath, and his hands, he's outside of the bathtub, but his arms are under like in the water. And I don't know any man that I've ever heard that has had to do that much work during the woman's labor, but and like I could feel his arms shaking during parts of it, because it was almost 3 hours that I was in the water doing all of this. So that's like 3 hours of him having to like hold my body up and stuff. And so like any other time, I would have felt bad that his arms were shaking and been like, babe, you can take a break, like you can take a second. But I knew like I needed him so bad. I couldn't tell him to stop, because I knew that I completely needed him so bad. Like truly during all of that, I felt like I needed their help so much, but I also didn't want to be bothered at all. So like there wasn't really any talking. It was just like whispers and low tones, which I had requested. But even still, like the few questions that they would ask, like, can you feel that? Or can we move you to a different position? Like, every time they would say, we're gonna try a new position, I was like, ugh, like in my head, like, please, like, it is so hard to move right now. Like, it sounds stupid when you can like actually reason through it, but now it's like why wouldn't I move to better positions that would help me get the baby out? So I did, but I remember at the time I like even asked at one point, I was like, can I just stay? Like, can I please not move? Because like that's how hard moving was at that point. But Connor made sure to keep like giving me sips of water, and I remember like they were the tiniest sips I was taking, like just like literally like wetting my mouth, because it felt like too much work to take a big drink. They were like telling Connor like, get her snacks, get her food. So he was like feeding me fruit snacks, and now that I think about it, I'm like, how nasty. Like his hands were floating in my water with who knows what was coming out of my body, and his hands were in that, and then he's like going over and grabbing me fruit snacks and popping them in my mouth. And like I didn't care at the time, I didn't know what was going on, I just kept my eyes closed and like chewed them, but like at the time it's like nothing matters. Anyways, pretty soon Jennifer started saying, look at all that hair, and they were like, whoa, and like everybody's like looking down at all the hair on the baby, and I like still couldn't like really see anything. But now I knew that there must be a head with a lot of hair down there, and everybody's saying like, oh my gosh, like so much black hair, that's so cool and stuff like that. And I was like shocked. I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting a head full of black hair. Again, this really encouraged me that like maybe we're getting close, because the head is right there. And all this felt like it happened like pretty shortly after I had gotten in the water. And I'd gotten in the water at 5 o'clock, and her head seemed like it was visible pretty quickly. So now each contraction was like so intense. I really can't explain it other than like I was vocalizing a lot, which doesn't mean screaming. I was never like yelling, but I was like, ooh, like all the low sounds like that. But there were several times when I was starting to get pretty loud with my like oohs, and the midwife kept telling me like, lower your voice. And she didn't mean lower it as in quiet down. She meant lower it like ooh, because like if I would start to get like like that, she would be like, lower your voice, because you start to like feel out of control when your voice gets higher, and it really isn't helpful either, but the oohs like open you up and put everything like downward. So I had to keep remembering that, and she was actually telling me over and over like chin to like chest, and so I would like tuck it in and make the ooh sounds, because that like really kept my voice lower by doing it that way. But like now was the time when there started getting like so many contractions that were so intense. I started feeling like I was losing control, which I think that's when you're going through transition. And I wasn't ever like, oh my gosh, get me the epidural, but there were several times where I was like, I don't know how this is ever gonna be over. Like it felt like every push, every contraction, like why is this still happening? Like how close are we to the end? And that's because I was pushing for several hours, and you start to think like, is this ever gonna be over? But like as my noises were getting more intense, I think Connor knew that like things were still progressively getting more intense, and he said he had to look away several times because he was like I was crying inside, and I knew if I like kept looking at you I would cry, and I've like never seen him cry. But he was like, that's the closest I've been like inside, like I was crying, like to see the person that you love like in that situation in such an enormous amount of, I wouldn't even call it pain, just like you are enduring all that your body is like capable of enduring at that point, and probably more, and like you can't help the person out of it. But he was doing everything he could to help me. But it was really sweet the way that he was literally holding me through the entire thing. So then at some point I looked down and I was able to see the head, like I could just see the black of her hair, and we ended up being in this position for hours. But once I saw it for myself, I was like, okay, like maybe just a few more pushes, like I can do this. It gave me like a new boost of like energy, like I can do this. And one of the best things that Jennifer said then was, she was like, okay, Sydney, I'm gonna have you reach down so that when the head comes out, the whole body is gonna fly out and you're gonna catch her, so that way you can catch your own baby. And I remember like I was able to somehow get the energy to ask her, I was like, so you're saying when the head comes out the whole body's gonna come out? And she was like, yeah, that's usually how it works. So that was a huge relief to hear that also. But I did think it was just gonna be a couple more pushes after we had that little discussion, and it ended up not just being a couple more pushes. So another thing that was really nice was Jen kept telling me, everything is happening exactly as it should be. Like, your body is opening up, your body is preparing for this baby, like everything is happening exactly as it should be. And so this encouraged me that my body was stretching over time, and that's what she was kind of saying, is like, this is textbook perfect, like your body needs to stretch over time so that it doesn't break open, like this is exactly how it's supposed to be. So then I felt better about the fact that it was taking so long to get the baby out. At this point, Connor was like, well, now Connor tells me, like, my body down there, every body part was pretty much like inside out because of all the pressure trying to push something out for so long. So it's kind of embarrassing to think of all the people that saw you like that, but it's so weird that truly nobody like thought about it in the moment, and like everybody was just so encouraging and supportive because they know like this is how it's got to be. And at some point I remember, like, from the tub, I like drowsily looked up and there were 2 other women in the room, and I was just like, I wonder how long they've been here and like what all have they seen. So there was a birth assistant and another lady that was like training, and so there were 3 women and Connor in the room with me. During these pushes now, Jen was like pushing on the skin down there to try and keep it from tearing, and it worked really successfully. So I felt so gross like being touched right there, but I knew that it was to keep me from tearing. And the water of a water birth also really helps you to not tear. So then from this point, Jen had me do something. She goes, Sydney, I'm gonna ask you to try something that you put in your birth plan that you don't wanna do, but I think it's time for you to just at least give it a shot. She had me push, like actually push, because I was just doing the breathing, pushing the whole time. And I think the thing is, normally that would work, but it wasn't working. Like, the baby was still not out and it had been like hours. So she wanted me to like push, like strain and push, because I assume now we're probably like running out of options, but I was still like, at the time I didn't think like, oh, we're running out of options, but now I can understand that because it had been so long. So now I started like holding my breath and pushing, and I think the entire time I did this for the next, who knows, like 40 minutes or something, I feel like probably in the ring of fire like the entire time, because there was just so much pressure. Jen kept like tapping me down there because I think there was like so much pressure, but I wasn't like aiming it in the right spot. So she'd keep tapping and she's like, push right here, and then I would be able to push more there. But it sounded like I was making more progress this way, because each time they'd be like, great, that was an awesome one, oh my gosh, look at that, like good job. And Connor's like pumped, he's like, that one was so good, Sid, keep it up, like do another one just like that. And so they were like really cheering me on. So that like makes you work harder even though you feel like you have no power left at that point. And she must have been able to tell that even though I looked like I was pushing, I was like holding back out of like fear. And so she'd keep telling me, don't run away from it, push toward it, push harder when you feel that pressure. And she kept saying like, there should be lots of pressure, because like you have to get through that to get the baby out. So she would even be like, lots of pain, lots of pressure right here. If you feel that, that's good, go toward it. And like, that's weird that your mind like needs those directions, because in that moment, like, you're pushing and it's still not enough. But she was reminding me like, that's exactly how it should feel. So when you feel that pressure, that's good, go toward it, because that's what you need to make progress. So after all this had been going on for a long time, she said something that I really did not want to hear. She said, we want you to get out of the tub and we're gonna help you onto the bed. Don't worry, we're gonna help you, and we're gonna get olive oil, like pour it all over the baby's head. And I'm just like, how the heck am I gonna get out of this big bathtub, like a huge bathtub? Like, I'm gonna have to step over steps and down the steps and up there. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I was like, can we not? And she's like, I really think we should. And so I just did it. But like, you're having contractions. Like, I remember at one point saying, I don't feel like I'm getting any breaks. Why am I not getting any breaks? Because they weren't like, I wasn't having like a minute in between the contractions anymore. They were just kind of like one after another. It was like, okay, like I had one. Now let's start to like try and get up so I can get to the bed. And it's like, okay, I have one right here. I'm getting up. I have one right here. I'm getting up. I have one right here. Like you're just having them the whole time. And so Connor like grabbed one arm and she grabbed the other, and they helped me. This baby's head is out, let me remind you. So you could see half of her head, and I'm walking over steps, walking over to the bed, and they help put me onto the bed and get me in the right position and stuff. And I'm just like, what the heck am I doing? So they plopped me onto the bed, like onto my hands and knees, and just I feel them like squirting olive oil all over. And so I went through several pushes like that. And then they had me flip over. The one position I said I would absolutely not do is like laying on my back on a bed. And what do you know? I like at that point you're just like, try this. So I get onto that position and I have like each of my feet like pushing up against, one's pushing up against Connor, one's pushing up against Jennifer, and they're like pushing against my legs and I'm pushing against them and they have olive oil squirted all over me. And they kept telling me like push right here and I'd push there and they're cheering me on. And Connor's like, did you see the head on that one? It moved so much, blah, blah, blah. Like, I feel like we're finally like very close. But a few of the pushes were like scaring me because they were so intense that I was like not going toward them. And then each time you don't go toward them, it's like, didn't make that much progress. Now you got to push again. So then there were a few times where I was like, I have to push with everything I have if I want this to be over. So I did. And in the next like 2 or 3 pushes, the whole baby came out. And this is exactly what I had hoped for, that it didn't get stuck past the head or past the shoulders or whatever, but the whole baby flew out and my hands weren't even down yet. So like Jennifer is grabbing the baby and like basically like throwing the baby onto me because I'm supposed to like be the first one to touch the baby or to catch the baby or whatever. But I see her like catching it and trying to like get it out of her hands, like, this is for you. And so I'm like trying to grab it at the same time too. So she hands it straight to me and puts it right on my chest. And it is just weird that like at that moment, like your privacy is completely out the window. So as I pick the baby up and putting her on my chest, one of the assistants behind me is ripping my swimsuit off over my head because they wanted like extra skin to skin, but I'm just like, whoa, like, okay, everything's happening now. And I just remember as I'm grabbing the baby, I like started to cry. And I remember saying, a real baby, like she's a real baby. That's gonna like make me cry because I've never really been around babies that much. Like I don't have siblings with little babies. I've never even changed a diaper, nothing. Like this is brand new to me. So to have someone handing me a real baby, I was like in awe. Like, you know, you're gonna be getting this baby, but here it is and it's mine. Like, I don't know, I can't even like really put it into words how surreal it was. And I think the cutest thing about it too was Connor wasn't just like, my baby. He was like, I was holding it and he was just the whole time like, good job, Sid. That was insane. Like, that was crazy. Good job. Like, he spent so much time before he ever even was holding his baby, just like, I don't know, like shaking me like, you are amazing. Like, that was incredible. Good job, babe. And that like meant so much to me. He made me feel like so good and so strong and like I just overcome the world. And I just remember I kept saying like, thank you, Jesus. It's very surreal to even now, 5 months later, think back at that. One of the weirdest things is once the baby was out, she didn't cry. Like they expected to come out screaming and she didn't. It was like actually really calm in the room. And I remember asking like, is it okay that she's not crying? And they're like, yes, everything's great. Everything's perfect. She looks great. They just kept putting her like every now and then they'd put her face down and like pat her on the back to try and get her to cough up whatever was, whatever she needed. But I remember just being like, wow, it's like strangely peaceful. Like I've got this quiet little baby like curled up on me. It was really cool. A few minutes later, she started crying then. So they told her like, put her up to your chest and see if she'll latch. And she latched immediately. And it was like wild in my brain to think like this baby has never even been out in the world before. It's never sucked on anything because it was using the umbilical cord in my womb. And she comes out and all of a sudden knows how to suck to get food. Like that to me is such a God thing, like a God created thing, like so mind blowing. I asked what time it was and she was born at 7:42. Which I got in the tub at 5 and like very shortly after was pushing. So it was like over 2 hours that I was just pushing. So I was like, oh man, that was a lot. It was already dark outside. Like they had darkening curtains so you couldn't even tell in the room the whole time. But apparently it had like rained and stormed the whole time, which is like, sounds like such a cozy setting, but like none of us even knew what was happening. It just felt like it was dark in the room and there were candles and like we didn't even know that it had stormed outside. Ricky's cord was pretty short also, so I couldn't like comfortably pull her up. We just had to kind of like set her here but not pull on her because she was still attached and it was a really short cord. So another thing that we weren't gonna do is we weren't gonna like have to manually pull the cord out. We were gonna kind of like let it happen on its own. But that also, like, if you go over an hour with the cord still attached, they have to send you to the hospital and get it detached or whatever. So at the 45-minute mark, after the cord's been attached for 45 minutes, they're like, okay, like maybe we should start trying to get this placenta out of here or whatever. So around 45 minutes, they had given us time to just rest and relax and lay there with our baby and enjoy her. And then they had to start working on getting the placenta out. So like almost right at the 1 hour mark is when it came out. And so that was perfectly fine. We were like thrilled to have delayed cord clamping, like for an hour basically is how long we got to have her attached. Some people say it's uncomfortable having the placenta like removed or whatever. It's like giving birth again is what some people say. And I was like, no, I barely felt that. I didn't even have much of a memory of it coming out. I was just like, okay, like I guess that was it. I didn't have any more contractions after she was out. Like I wasn't having contractions like to get my placenta out. Not that I noticed, at least. Maybe they were so mild I didn't think about them. So like after all this, like we'd been like snuggling with her for a long time and everything. And shortly after she came out, everyone was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, what is going on? And I guess she pooped all over my body. It was like black because when they're first born, it's that black tarry poop. So she did that on me. And before we ever put a diaper on her, she ended up doing that 3 separate times where they had to clean me all up and then we snuggled and stuff. And then like 10 minutes later, she pooped all over me. And they cleaned me all up again. So it was 3 times until they're like, get this girl a diaper. So then Jennifer checked me like later on to see if there were any like tears or anything. And there were 2 tiny tears inside that didn't need stitches. So although it really sucked to have her stuck for so long, like Jennifer was right. My body was like preparing to get the baby out and was stretching itself out. And that was pretty amazing that I didn't like have any tears that needed stitches. They were all tears that could heal on their own with Manuka honey. I just put that on there and it healed me like in a couple days. So like one of the other things that we did there was they wanted me to shower maybe like 2 hours after or something when we'd called our families, we'd showed everybody, FaceTimed people, all that kind of stuff. And then they're like, okay, we want you to go pee and we want you to shower. And I just remember feeling so terrified. Like everything down there felt so weak. Like things could just fall out of me. I don't know. I was just so scared. I was like, this cannot be happening. So I went to the bathroom. Someone had to stand in there with me. And so I started showering off and like the steam of the shower and everything was really hot. And I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna pass out. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm okay. And like the lady was just like, let me know if everything's not gonna be okay. So I like put shampoo in my hair and I was like, okay, I gotta rinse this out quick. I'm gonna pass out. So I started rinsing it out and I'm like, all right, I think I'm going down. So she like opened the curtain up and helped me out of the shower onto the floor. I'm laying completely naked, nothing on at all, laying on the bathroom floor, just like taking deep breaths. And I'm like, oh, I feel so much better now that I'm laying here. And it's so weird because I came in here as a private girl and then I leave just like I'm laying here on the floor, nothing on. Like I had like one of the other ladies bring me a drink. She's like giving me drinks of like juice and I'm laying here. I have like shampoo that's still in my hair. So this woman helped me then put an adult diaper on and helped me get into like an outfit. And we went back to the room and I got to eat. I ate mini corn dogs and none of the ladies even knew what corn dogs were. They'd never had them. I was like, what in the world is this weird Florida place where nobody's had corn dogs? But while I was laying on the floor in that bathroom, I talked to my midwife about like, did you think you were gonna have to tear or cut me? Because at a hospital, they normally would have cut me, given me an episiotomy to make it so that the baby's head can come out. And the midwife said, to be honest, I don't believe in episiotomies. I don't give them to anybody. I never have in all the like 40 years I've been doing this or 30 years or whatever. She's like, I've never given one. And today I thought I was going to have to give my first. And I was like, really? I was like, do you think at the hospital they would have? And she's like, yeah, they would have definitely given you one. But she was like, I've never seen skin so strong. She's like, usually if the baby is stuck, you can like stick a finger in there and help pry the baby out. And she's like, there was no sticking a finger in there for you. You were at your maximum stretch, but somehow you didn't tear. She's like, that is insane. So when I got back to the room, I like held her for a little bit and I thought I felt pretty good and fine and everything. But then after a little bit, I was like, okay, I'm like still feeling kind of dizzy. Like I wouldn't feel comfortable going home if I still feel a little bit lightheaded. So I let them put an IV in me for a little bit, but I had like asked for it at that point. I didn't want anything beforehand, but at that point I was like, can you just give me something that will like make me feel more normal? Like I feel so weak, like I could pass out at any given moment. So they like pumped a little bit of something into me and I felt better like very quickly. Took a little bit of a nap and then at 1 a.m. we left. So they had me stay an extra hour because I was feeling lightheaded. So I had her at 7:42 p.m. and at 1 a.m. we were on our way home. We got home and I just snuggled with her and ate some snacks and Connor fell straight to sleep. But it was I remember it feeling so wild, walking into our apartment at like 1 a.m., carrying a baby's car seat and thinking, wow. This morning at 12 o'clock, we were headed to our appointment out of the same apartment. And now it's 1 a.m., the same exact day, and we're walking back in with a baby. Like it's so weird because at the hospital, people normally stay a few days, but yeah, it was really cool. Yeah, if you guys have any other questions, let me know. It's really been fun and interesting looking back on this whole experience because I haven't like let myself think about it much since I've had her. We named her like shortly after she came out. We still weren't 100% on a name, but we decided on Ricky like after she had been out for a few minutes, but we didn't officially decide on her middle name for a few more days. So yep, Ricky Jolene, which we decided on Jolene while we were listening to the song Jolene. That is pretty much it. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Thanks guys for watching. Subscribe if you haven't, and we'll see you next time.